Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. In the spirit of the trees, in the spirit of living nature, of which we're an integral part, with deep gratitude to all of our ancestors that have brought us to the present moment, I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. Today, we want to look at two issues. We want to explore what is happening as Humanity Rising evolves its way into the Humanity Rising network. But before we do that, we want to spend some time on the death of a young Iranian woman just over a week ago, whose funeral was on Monday, exactly when Queen Elizabeth II had her funeral and was laid to rest in Windsor Castle. It was a global event on her behalf, but there was another funeral of this young woman who was brutally killed by the Iranian regime, and whose death has sparked protests worldwide. So we're wanting to invite a fellow Iranian to speak to us, who's been on the program, who was actually on our program on Monday and raised it with the group that was commemorating Queen Elizabeth. But before we dive into that domain, let us pause, as we always do, and just breathe together. You know, with all the chaos and all the stresses and all the ecological turbulence that is surrounding us now and getting worse day by day, the most important thing that we can do individually and collectively is to practice those ancient wisdoms of how we calm ourselves and maintain our emotional and psychological equilibrium, so that we have the fortitude to navigate through an increasingly chaotic world. So we want to breathe together, and we breathe in a very specific way that science has indicated is the optimal way to bring heart, brain, full body coherence. And that is just to inhale for about 5.5 seconds and exhale for about 5.5 seconds. And we'll do it to the sound of bells. So when you hear the first bell, just begin slowly to inhale. When you hear the second bell, exhale. And we're going to only take 15 breaths. But when you finish the 15 breaths, you're going to feel better, you're going to feel more calm, and you'll be ready for the program and for the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Georg, let us breathe together. Thank you, everyone. So good to breathe as one. In the recollection of what Plotinus said several thousand years ago, that the whole universe breathes together. In that spirit, I want to welcome Banafsheh Sayad, who's a Persian, born in Iran, who from a very early age realized that her mission was to dance and to teach the dance. And as the founder of Dance of Oneness, she also is the co-director of the Chartres Academy that convenes each year in Chartres to honor the sacred feminine. And when we commemorated Queen Elizabeth's funeral, as I said in my introduction, Banafsheh and Andrew brought to our attention the simultaneity of the funerals of Queen Elizabeth and Mahsa Amini of Iran. So I have been mentioning it all week and thought that we would culminate the week by having Banafsheh in to tell us more about what the world has learned about the death, the circumstances around the death of Mahsa Amini, and the protests that have now circumnavigated the world in a very, very powerful way. So welcome, Banafsheh, and just tell us what you know and what the Iranian community has learned about the death of this woman and how it's affected the politics of Iran.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jim. I greet everyone and thank you all for being a part of this program that sheds light on so many issues that we don't get to hear about and we don't get to go deeply into on other platforms. I thank you for speaking about Mahsa Amini every day. I think this is probably the most important thing going on in our lives today, definitely in the lives of the Iranians in Iran and around the world. As many of you have heard either through this program or other programs that have been speaking about what has happened, Mahsa Amini, whose other name is Gina, was had just traveled to Tehran from a region in Kurdistan with her family, just for a holiday. And she was singled out by the so-called morality police and taken to a re-education center because she reportedly wasn't wearing the hijab or the Islamic covering, appropriately. And this Islamic hijab or covering, the rules of it change all the time. No one really knows exactly what the current rule is, and the morality, the so-called morality police, goes around and enforces this rule that they decide and changes all the time. So anyway, she was taken, even though she reportedly was only walking with her brother. In Iran, men and women are not supposed to be together in public unless they're married or they're related. And it appeared to the morality police perhaps that these two were not related, or they were in a relationship that from the Islamic point of view is not deemed correct. So she was taken away, and we all know, even though the regime denies this, that she was beaten to death. It took her a few days. She went into a coma after she was beaten, and after a few days she passed. And this is not the first time something like this has happened, even in the recent times. But people have just had it. People have had it with this regime for a number of reasons. Of course, human rights being a very important issue, but also the condition of living. So many people live in dire poverty, and they don't have food, they don't have access to clean water. And these are just a few things. While the regime, the mullahs, the perpetrators, the personnel, the staff, the regime itself is increasingly becoming more and more wealthy and just taking away from the public. So people have just absolutely had it. They're when this event happened, it was like like you said, a spark, but a real explosion of how people were feeling, and because they have nothing to lose, they're just out on the streets and protesting, and the protests are being led by women, and it's a lot of it is about the hijab and the enforcement of this Islamic rule on them, and the protests are widespread all over the country, and women are burning their hijab, they're cutting their hair in public, and these protests have also grown out of Iran as well. In Los Angeles, where I live, we've had protests that are getting larger and larger. This is a moment. This is a very important moment, a very pivotal point, because if we band together enough, if we give enough support to what is happening in Iran, if we expose, if we magnify what is happening and stand in solidarity with the people of Iran, we can hopefully put an end to this regime and bring about another regime in a more peaceful way than the previous revolution, of course, which was very deadly and violent. This is amazing. This is huge. This is a huge moment.
When you and I were talking, you referred to it as a George Floyd moment, and I think that that's very true.
Yeah.
That you have the death after death after death, and it somehow doesn't ignite the passion of the public mind, the collective consciousness. Then all of a sudden you have George Floyd, and then you have Masa Amini,
Yeah.
and then everything gets ignited. That's a very powerful image. I'd love to hear you speak more about that.
Yes. When George Floyd was murdered, people stood up in solidarity, across the United States, of course, but also around the world. And even from Iran, we saw footage of people who are living themselves in dire straits, who are completely living under oppression, going out into the streets with holding banners that said, put an end to racism. So they stood up. In solidarity with everyone who was protesting the murder of George Floyd. So it's time now for the West to do the same, to stand up and see that this is a similar moment. This is a similar moment of that's tragic, that we need to all stand up and really look at what is happening. As Martin Luther King Jr. says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It is time for us to see that what happens everywhere in the world is impacting all of us. And I also want to add, Jim, that Mahsa's name in Kurdish is Jina. Jina means life. And it is quite profound that she was 22 years old and we are in 2022. So this is a soul that has come in. This is a very evolved soul, many of us are talking about, who has in a way martyred herself, sacrificed herself for this ignition, for this spark. And it's a movement that is starting from Iran, but it will be a global movement that will be standing up to injustice and unfairness everywhere. And I want to say injustice and unfairness because I don't know if you heard the Iranian president at the UN, addressing the UN, Raisi. He was at the UN on Wednesday, and he had the audacity to talk about justice and fairness and human rights. He actually said the world needs to see Iran as a model of this. So I want to say exactly to stand up against that kind of rhetoric, that kind of behavior, that kind of injustice.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'd love to just explore your own story, just while we have the pleasure of your company and this momentous time, because you grew up in Iran and you yourself, I imagine, as someone committed to the dance, had your own experiences of being under duress and being reviled and persecuted in your own way. So I'd love to hear, and I'm sure our global audience would love to hear your own story, because you grew up before the revolution. You were born before the revolution, but you experienced the revolution in 1978, 1979 with the Ayatollah Khomeini. Tell us a little bit about those circumstances of your early childhood and the revolution, and because I know your whole family was affected, and you finally had to all leave the country because of the situation. Tell us that story.
Yes, Jim. Actually, I would like to start by saying, dispelling a big, huge lie. The regime of Iran, the Islamic Republic, wants the world to think that the hijab is the cultural dress code, as they call it, a cultural dress code. I want to tell your viewers and everyone in the world that this is absolutely not true. Before the revolution of 78, 79, women had a choice of if they wanted to wear the Islamic covering, if they wanted to observe the hijab or not. And women who chose it and the women who didn't lived together peacefully. Everyone just had acceptance of the others. And it was after the revolution that this changed. And I will talk about my own story in relation to this. This was in 1980, and my mother and my sister had just returned from the West. We had left before the revolution, right before the revolution we had left, because my father is a filmmaker, and his films were being censored by the Shah's regime. And he felt like he needed to leave and just kind of rethink what he wanted to do and take us with him. So we had left before the revolution, and we saw the revolution from on television. And in the beginning, people who had left before the revolution were very hopeful, thinking that things were going to change for the better. But immediately they realized that that was not the case at all. That we had really created something awful that we had started to see the effects of very early on. So when we returned, and it was 1980, the hijab was not enforced yet. Women were still, wearing the same outfits, and they appeared in public in the same way as they did before the revolution. And I remember, I was only 12, but I remember the older women, saying that they will never ever be able to make us wear the hijab. We will refuse this. We will not observe the Islamic code as they want to enforce it. But what happened was, very slowly, if we wanted to go into a store, very slowly you started seeing signs in windows of stores that said, "Women without hijab not allowed." Or you wanted to go into a public building and you would see this sign. Or taxis wouldn't pick you up. You wouldn't be able to go into buses. But it happened so slowly that we didn't even know it was happening. So we didn't get it. The women didn't have a chance to actually come together and protest this, because it was so slow. It was just some places were showing this sign, and then slowly every place was showing it. And before we knew it, we had to wear this covering. Otherwise, we couldn't we couldn't participate in public gatherings. And then after that, there were violent reactions to it. Women had acid thrown into their faces. people would get arrested. So it just very slowly, they did this so slowly, we didn't even know that it was happening until it was too late. Until it was too late.
Mm.
And this morality police, when I lived in Iran, it was actually even much harsher. It was the Revolutionary Guard that was on the streets with rifles, and they would just randomly ask you, where are you going? And you had to tell them exactly where you were going, and they would even search you for no reason, and they would even take you, imprison you for no reason, and then no one would hear from you. This still continues. It's in waves. It gets harsh, very strict, and then it gets a little bit more lax when people really have had it. But the condition is just awful. It must be so difficult for people in the West to think that there are places in the world that this kind of thing still is going on, where a group of men enforce how women should appear in public and how you should live your life, and ban dancing in public, for example. Women's dancing in public is banned. You could go to prison for it and never be heard of again. It's just, the list just goes on and on, Jim. But what I wanted to say was this morality police and this center of re-education and the way they take you into these places and they try to brainwash you. When I was in school in Iran, after the revolution, every morning we had to line up in these, we had to file up in the courtyard of our school and chant Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to the USSR, and every once in a while death to the United Kingdom, but it would change depending on the relationship of Iran with the UK, but definitely always death to America, death to Israel. And we were these little kids and we had to, make little fists and do this, and they would walk around and say louder, louder. And if you were quiet, if you weren't chanting, you would be sent to the principal's office, and you would get a lesson in correction. You would be re-educated. And our hijab was always checked, and they would say, bring it down lower, bring the lower part up higher. We had to wear a hijab that only showed this part of our face. Everything else was covered. And we had to do the prayer, the Islamic prayer. And even if you didn't know it, you had to pretend you knew it, because then you would be again taken to the principal's office and re-educated.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, how was it for you as someone so passionate about the dance? Because I would imagine that caused its own series of challenges and experiences for you as you were going through your childhood and coming of age.
Oh yes. I mean, even though I come from a lineage of performing artists. My father's side have been performers and orators and that kind of thing, and very famous, very, very, very famous. When I announced that dance was my passion and this is all I wanted to do, I was dancing all the time. Every chance I had, I was dancing. But no one, because dance doesn't have a high place in my culture, because dance, even though people may not be religious, it's still ingrained in them. This kind of suspicion of dance, and this it's a body hatred, Jim. Also, this in Islam, in the fundamentalist Islamic view, the body is a house of sin. And you need to transcend it. You need to transcend the body, and that's one of the reasons. It needs to be completely covered, and a woman's body belongs to her father, and then to her husband, and this is one of the reasons that women need to be covered because they're the possession of the man, and other men shouldn't be looking at her. So when I announced that I was going to dedicate myself to dance, it was like I was saying I'm going to stand on the street, and that was going to be my profession. Prostitution was going to be my profession. This was the same. Dance was seen as the same. Ever since, people like me have dedicated their lives to dance, it has changed the people's view of dance in my culture. I had a big part in shifting this view. But for myself, it was a very, very difficult journey, a difficult struggle, because I had very little support. Even though people thought I danced beautifully, they thought, oh, well, why don't you just do it as a hobby? Why don't you just do it at home and, in your own living room, kind of a thing? And I was like, no, this is not why I came here. I didn't come here to do what others think is right. I have a mission, and part of it is the liberation of the body, the liberation of the feminine through dance, through the celebration of life, and with the body. So I never stopped. I resisted all of the accusations and all the slander, and just continued, and it was a very tough journey. Yes.
And it was probably tough in its own, but very different way in the West, because dance is both sacred, but it's also sensual. And the Abrahamic religions generally have real problems with women, but particularly a liberated woman, much less an embodied woman. So you've really pioneered some very profound breakthroughs on behalf of all of us in various ways through your journey to embody dance. And tell us more about that, and tell us more about the dance of oneness that you fashioned, and the importance of embodying our sensuality and embodying the liberation of the spirit through the body.
Yes, it's true. It's true that religions, the institutionalized religions, the Abrahamic institutionalized religions, really look at dance as a threat, I would say, because it's through dance that we feel liberated. We can make this direct connection with the source of being, and feel in ourselves this power moving us, moving through us, that we don't need a broker between ourselves and the divine. We don't need somebody, brokering this relationship. It's a direct relationship. And so this is one of the reasons it's suspect. And because dance has always been part of the indigenous ways, and let's say more primal, it's also seen as suspect. And there's no way that a dancer thinks that the body is less than the soul. For a dancer, for a person dancing, you feel the interconnection of all. You feel one with your soul. And so body, soul, mind, heart are all one. And you actually even have the possibility to be no one, dissolve the boundaries of your identity into the greater. All of this is possible in dance so readily. And so this is one of the reasons that religions don't appreciate and don't uphold dance, and they try to suppress it. And it's through the body, right? Most of these religions look at the body as the cage of the soul, let's say. Which to me is just, that's one of the greatest blasphemies. How can the body be the cage of the soul? How can the body be any less sacred? How can creation be thought of as something that is a cage, that is something that limits the human spirit? The body has been created just like the soul has been created
Mm.
by the creator, by whatever you call the divine, whatever for you is the source of the source of the source. So I feel that dance also puts us in this place where we feel confident, we feel bold, we feel we can express who we are, and what you said is so key as well, the sensuality, to really celebrate the senses instead of looking at them as, again, a limitation. Celebrate them and see how the senses can actually evolve us and enlighten us. So all of the things that we love so much and we help us grow and evolve is exactly what governments and viewpoints that the Islamic Republic holds. It's exactly what they want to oppress, and it is by upholding all of that that we resist them, and we force them out.
Yeah, I think that's a very profound point that you're making. And the reason why everyone, I wanted to illuminate Banafshe's life, because as she's saying, the way to commemorate the death of someone like Masa Amini is to dance. The way to condemn the regime is to exercise our freedom. The way to stand against the repression of the body and the beating of a 22-year-old woman to death is to use our bodies in the exuberance of who we are, in the freedom to be authentically breath-breathing human beings. And so this exemplifies what Humanity Rising seeks to do. You know, in all the chaos of this world, we seek to emphasize goodness and blessing and the audacity of imagination and all the solutions that are out there that are liberating human beings in a very, very powerful way. And so that's why we wanted to bring Banafshe on, it's sort of as a counterpoint to Masa, so that we can both feel the grief and feel the sorrow and the outrage, but also feel the liberation and the sensuality and the affirmation of freedom and dignity and justice by recommitting ourselves to being full human beings in this time of mass psychosis and chaotic political, economic turbulence. So Banafshe, I want to thank you. I'd love to have you bring your presentation to an end. You may want to show that video maybe at the end, because that's such a powerful expression of everything you're talking about. But talk to us a little bit just about your own spirituality through Jalaluddin Rumi and the Sufis, because I think that also needs to be held in this moment, everyone. There's the fundamentalism of Islam, but there's also the sublime ecstasy of Islam that Banafshe has embraced her entire life.
Jim, I love what you were saying about both holding the grief but also celebrating, because what grief does, it contracts us, but it also inspires us to stand up and take action. And this is what the people of Iran are doing right now. They actually have nothing left to lose. This government has oppressed them to the point where they're like, this entire country is a prison. I'm not afraid to go to prison. This is prison. And because they have nothing else to lose, nothing else left to lose, they've risen up. And they're giving their all. And what we need to do is to magnify that, to amplify it, and to keep the eyes of the world on Iran and their actions and what is coming out of there. Because the government wants to, the government has the internet is down in Iran, for example, so that these little videos that people have been sharing cannot be shared, so that the rest of us won't know what is happening. But if we keep our eyes on the country, and if we keep demanding to know and to shine the light, then things can change. And from there, this movement that has started by the women can grow and become global. But I love what you said about the dance, and I want to say that, Masso's own lineage of Kurdistan, this is a region where people dance to commemorate everything important in their lives. They dance at weddings, they dance for birthdays, but they also dance at funerals. So the power of the collective dance, and each event has its own type of dance. The dance at the funeral is, of course, somber, but it reminds us of the life force that is in us that can be used for the benefit of the greater, for goodness, truth, and beauty. So I just wanted to say that so that people become more familiar with the Kurdish culture, which is so rich and so profound, and it actually has maintained a lot of the Persian spirit, because Islam came to Iran and came to Persia and overtook the country, and many people embraced it, but it was something that wasn't intrinsic to the land, to the culture, and it was with the Kurdish people that the Persian culture has remained more intact. So love and a lot of good energy to the Kurdish people who are suffering and struggling in different countries, as you know, struggling for their independence in different regions like Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. But to also speak about Rumi, and this is another way I want to inspire people around the world to also stand up with the people of Iran. People love Rumi so much. He has helped, his poetry, his teaching has helped people across the world for years and years and years. This person is Persian. This is the heart of Iran. This is the soul of Iran. So if not standing up for the people of Iran, if people don't care about what happens there, you should care about the soul that is in Rumi, as he has helped you so much and has helped inspire so many around the world, and he has been the consoler of so many hearts when we have been in pain and in agony. So it's time for us to give back what we have received from him in this way of standing in solidarity and making the governments around the world take action against this government and stop supporting them in the ways that they do, whether it's obvious or not obvious. But to answer your question about the ecstasy of Islam, I would say that there are teachings in Islam that are profound, and these teachings are universal teachings, and they're ancient teachings that are just coming through this modality. So that's what I relate to. That is what I have been inspired by. It's really the Sufi expression of what is at the heart of Islam, which is at the heart of all mystical teachings, and the invitation to embody love, to open ourselves to love, however it manifests, and not holding back, and not feeling that we need to comply or force ourselves into a mold that is not in tune with what lives in our hearts, and to trust that. And as Rumi says, gamble everything for love, especially at this dire condition of the entire world, right? As we face so many different crises, to gamble everything for love is the invitation. And however you hear that, however you sit and listen deeply to your own heart of what it means for you to gamble everything for love. I can say for myself, I gambled everything for my love of dance and to bring this dance to as many people as I can, to inspire them to live in their bodies with love. I feel like so many of us are disembodied, so many of us are, for various reasons, unable to really be present in our bodies. And the religions have had a lot to do with that. They've actually, hypnotized our heads and pitted us against our bodies. So my aim has been to inspire people to live in their bodies with love, regardless of pain, regardless of whatever shape and condition your body is in. It is sacred. It is your holy sanctuary. So that has been my aim through Dance of Oneness, helping people embody themselves, and the vehicle is dance. The vehicle is dance, which liberates, which frees us, which brings us into this loving awareness.
Thank you so much. I think, why don't we end with you showing that one little video, because I think it encapsulates in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Rage and the protest and the exuberance of the dance.
And the absolute courage, the bravery.
Yeah.
So with pleasure, I will share this. This is from the streets. We don't know which city, but in Iran, and women burning their hijab, dancing on the streets. All of this is something that will, they're risking their lives for this, and this incredible bravery, incredible courage, I hope will inspire all of us to gamble everything for love.
Thank you, Banafsheh. Thank you for illuminating the challenge and the inspiration that comes from the authentic life and gambling everything for love. Best of luck. All strength to you and all the women in Iran.
Thank you. Let's pray for the safe passage of the people of Iran. Let's pray for that, please.
One of the reasons why we wanted to take the time to go into this today, everyone, is to exemplify what Humanity Rising stands for. As I said, from the time of our inception in May of 2020, with the depth of the pandemic all around us and the chaos, lockdown, social distancing, mass hysteria being fomented by the big pharmaceutical companies and our governments, Humanity Rising has taken the stand that human beings at this moment in history can protest, but they can also dance. They can challenge, they can question authority. They can also act in extraordinary ways to bring imagination, solutions, and goodness into the world. So Humanity Rising, from the very beginning, has sought to represent the full spectrum of, I would say, the light and shadow dimensions of our current predicament and our current opportunities in a way that honors all the perspectives as part of the larger whole. So we want to conclude our program today by taking the next 45 minutes or so talking about the progress of Humanity Rising and where it is now headed. And to do that, I wanted to bring in two close friends and colleagues that have been very instrumental in shaping both the beginning of humanity rising and the I would say the strength and the success of humanity rising with our partnership with the Sign Network, and then the direction that humanity rising is now going as it evolves into a network, a global network. And I'd like to just take a few minutes just rehearsing the history, because I think once we understand the history, we'll also understand the potency of where it can now go as the opportunity. We were in the depths of the pandemic. There was an impulse that came through the Ubiquity staff that there had to be something that we could do. As I always say, in every crisis, there's an opportunity. So when anything gets, the worse it gets, the more we at Ubiquity think, geez, where's the opportunity in all this? If there's a global crisis now, what could we do that's also global? And the idea emerged to do something very, very simple. And that is, why don't we just start a daily Zoom call and invite people from all over the world who are all in lockdown and in isolation just to come together. And it turned out that the simplicity of the idea was its power. And within literally a few weeks, we had people registering online from over 130 countries. Thousands of people started to show up. And then we were introduced to John Raymer. And John had been putting together simultaneously, actually, with the rise of humanity rising, he was putting together the Sign Network, which he'll tell us about in a few minutes, which was bringing together a coalition of groups to share Facebook pages and YouTubes and LinkedIn pages. So once we began to realize that they were rising, humanity rising was rising, and that if we put the two of them together, and humanity rising could then broadcast out through the Sign live streaming partners, all of a sudden, humanity rising was exponentially extended out into the global arena, which brought in more numbers. And then all of a sudden, there was all kinds of partnerships that began to just naturally develop as people from all over the world began to email me, from Mongolia, from Namibia, from Peru. And people were excited that there was somewhere in the world that was emphasizing the goodness of which we're capable at a time when the mass media was isolating us and telling us that we were in a deepening crisis, which was also true. So it was out of that George Campanelli also began to emerge, and we began to do programs. And then George had the bright idea last fall, this could turn into a network. We could really create like a people's CNN. And it was at that moment that I think the light bulb went on for a lot of us, that what we've been doing almost reactively, proactively, was actually a seriously good idea. That if you could bring together a broadcast capacity with an educational capacity, all emphasizing action in the world to save humanity at the moment when it's teetering on the precipice of self-destruction, that would be an extraordinary contribution to the global moment. So that's why I wanted to bring John Raymer in and George Campanelli in, who've been such deeply committed to humanity rising and to the larger conversation with Unity Earth and the 99 days that is now culminating, that John can mention as well. It's all part of humanity rising. We are in this We do everything, as we say, in the spirit of radical collaboration, because that's all that's left. There's nothing left, my friends. The governments aren't going to solve these problems. The governments are the problem. And we, the people, have to somehow come together with such power, as we're seeing around the death of Masa Amini, is the power of women and the power of protest and the power of the dance. So it's in that spirit that Humanity Rising convenes each and every day. And it's in this spirit that we're evolving, but it's only through partners. We're not doing this on our own. We're doing this with thousands of partners around the world. And that's all of you watching and all the organizations that have done anything on Humanity Rising. We've had over 2,000 speakers. We've had hundreds, I think upwards of 400 official sponsoring organizations, and maybe a couple thousand organizations represented that have been in some kind of programmatic involvement with what we're doing. So it's all of us together that are rising. And as the crisis deepens, the opportunities proportionally expand. And we are on the opportunity vector. And that's why people think often that I'm a little too optimistic and joyful. But that's very important. You got to dance the revolution in our view. So in that spirit of deep love and appreciation for all of our partners, I'd like to start with you, John, and thank you so much for everything that you did early on back in the spring of 2020. We just came together as brothers and comrades, and I want to thank you and tell us about SIGN. Tell us what you're doing with Unity Earth in 99 days and your powerful, inspiring vision of global collaboration.
I love you so. You are just what the world needs right now. That is the message of our time. We are sorting this out. We've never been here before. Radical collaboration. You know, I was thinking when the car came out, it was the horseless carriage, right? People couldn't understand the car. There's something new being born here in this enormous disruption. And it starts with authenticity and just getting real with each other and using this new medium to connect. So you've thrown humanity a lifeline. Humanity Rising is exactly what we need to find each other, to discover what's possible in this crazy situation right now where we know the news is not serving us. You know, we couldn't find anything about Pakistan in the news. And here, look what's happening in the streets of Moscow and the streets of Iran. This is where you come to find out that that's what's going on in the world. This is so important that we realize that the institutions that we've been relying upon are not serving us anymore. And it's up to we, the people. So it is a privilege and a joy. This is what I got up for. This is, I guess, what we were born for. Anybody that's listening to this, you were born, for this time, you've got the golden ticket. This is up to us. And, you know, we don't have a good history of working well together. So we're honest with each other. We're sorting that out. We're learning how do we really turn what we have into what we need. We have this new medium. It's amazing what we could do. It's not just a passive, lean back kind of watch thing anymore. It's time to get informed, but it's also time to get educated, to make our lifelong life as learners a manifest reality. We need to keep getting educated, but we also need to be able to engage. And those dimensions of the future for Humanity Rising are exactly what I feel is missing at this time. So we're right almost at the end of our 99 days of Peace Through Unity. And I just want to tell you guys one or two examples of what's happened in the last couple days that have been so amazing. Because for me, you know, I'm here in the magic canoe. This is a magic canoe that's a vessel for traveling between worlds. We're going from a world no longer to a world not yet. And the thing that paddles and publishes and fuels all this is service. And there's a woman, good example of a social innovator, Nina Meyerhoff, who had a dream to create One Humanity Institute and to create a city of hope in Auschwitz. And sure enough, when the war breaks out in Ukraine, and she'd been working on this for years and years, she realized that this bakery they'd been given there in Oswiecim, in Auschwitz, could be a home for Ukrainian refugees. So on a dime, they turned around and said, okay, we're going to build this bakery into a house of hope to be able to bring in Ukrainian refugees. And she did. They first gave out 10,000 teddy bears to kids who were coming from Ukraine into Poland. And then we lost Philip Helmick, the director of peace over at the Shift Network. And Nina said, you know what, we should do something to honor Philip. And sure enough, they put the Peace Lab in the House of Hope in a memory for Philip Helmick. Well, what we just witnessed was, for me, what the internet was really built for. On the International Day of Peace, there was a youth convergence. And we're sitting there watching here, kids from Ukraine sitting in Poland, connected up with their friends and youth in the Ukraine, who talked about bomb shelter classrooms, talked about the impact of the sirens and the impact on their nervous system of a steady stream of bad news and their compadres dying. But these kids in the Ukraine, connected to the kids from Ukraine and Poland that are in Poland, connected with kids in Rwanda who are talking about how they've been coping with a war that took place before they were even born, connected to kids in Chicago. And there was Nina orchestrating the most inspiring conversation. And I said, there you go. That's a new world. And this young man from Poland was talking about how he's learning Ukrainian because he wants to be able to connect and care for the kids who have come from Ukraine and are living now in the House of Hope there. And that was just one example of what we were able to pull together during this, what we call Convergence, where many people stood up. We had like 15 different convergence rooms where people were curating offerings of genius. I mean, we had Vandana Shiva. I mean, many, many people that you guys know of. But we also had just people who had something important they wanted to share with the world in these convergence rooms that we were then putting out on the network. And we've reached just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people doing this. And it's just an example of what we're capable of when we turn what we have into what we need at this time. So, and there's lots of examples of that. In fact, we have an open space today, our last day, which the whole theme is end war, build peace together, regenerate all life on earth. And we yesterday consecrated the Pyramid of Peace from the Andes Mountains with this amazing indigenous-led ceremony. They built a 7-story pyramid out of bamboo. I mean, the humanity is rising. And that humanity rising is here to amplify and to strengthen this impulse. It's just a blessing. It's a miracle. This is our time, guys. And I'm all in. We're all in. If not now, when? And if not us, who? So I'm ready. Letting me be your partner in all this. And it's the signed member. So just to make it one thing clear, we're using trust. This is fueled by trust. So we're admins on hundreds of Facebook pages that people said, okay, I get it. Together we can do things we're not capable of doing by ourselves. So we're able to take a live stream, turn that into a sine wave by it being shared on multiple pages. This is just one simple little example. When we change the way we're relating, we could change our patterns. And we change our patterns, it'll change our situation. And we need to deal with, like Otto Scharmer said, we're really well organized to produce results that nobody wants. So we're looking for new ways to get ourselves together, new ways to get the word out, new ways to empower people and voices that haven't been heard, that need to be heard. It's a privilege and a joy to dedicate my life to our collective expression of unity and humanity rising. Honored to be here, brother, right here with you.
Thank you so much, John. You know, it's the coming together, I would say, of the humanity rising and sign, this capacity that John and his colleagues have developed of pooling Facebook pages, pooling YouTube and LinkedIn so that you can live stream and create waves. That's the catalyst. That's the elixir out of which we believe a new future can emerge. Because individually, we're never going to do it on our own. Collectively is the only way we're going to do it. But as John says, we don't have a very good record among us progressives of working together very successfully. It's our Achilles heel. So you've got to design a collaborative scaffolding that allows all of us to maintain our self-interest while we collaborate at the same time. So nobody's compromising, nobody's giving up autonomy, but rather amplifying autonomy, amplifying potential by coming together synchronistically. And that's really what John Raymer and Sign have pulled off, is a new model. It's teaming. It's TEAMING, but it's also teaming, TEMING, like a flock of birds or a shoal of fish. That's the book. Yes, it's a powerful, powerful book. I'm just reading it, and it's inspiring me because that's the model that we're trying to implement and embody as we move forward. And within this context, I would like to bring in George Campanelli, because George was the one that channeled the vision of what little old Humanity Rising, warts and all, could become. As I would say, John and I and Sign and Humanity Rising were the kind of like an early stage company, an entrepreneurial impulse that ended up making every mistake possible, but miraculously learning from these and getting stronger and wiser as we went along. And then came George Campanelli. And so, George, I want to thank you for everything you've done along the way, and particularly the seminal idea that you brought in of how we could really take this to a global level by creating a network. So tell us about your vision and what you have in mind. You're on mute.
So there we are. The first thing I want to say is that it's so hard working with both of you because you lack passion and enthusiasm and heart and those kinds of things. So, you know, it's really tough, but somebody has to do it. And I'm delighted that I can be a part of this particular process. I also, Jim, you're being humble, but you're also understating the thing that came through first the Ubiquity team, and then was born in the interaction between Humanity Rising and the Sign Network. And I say that because while you guys had your heads down and were working really hard at the individual pieces, it was relatively easy for me to come in and see the wonder of this creation, you know? It was just so obvious to me that what you call your entrepreneurial startup had that spark of genius that is precisely what humanity needs right now. And when I was listening to the piece of Masa at the beginning, and then listening to the whole piece about dance and the beauty of her articulation when Benisha was talking about Iran and Persia and Rumi, and I thought, you know, we've been doing this series on democracy, and one of the things that we haven't done is we haven't brought in people from around the world who live under what is not democracy, so that they can help us remember what an extraordinary what an extraordinary gift it is. And that's why it's so important that we hold on to it so that we can finally refine it enough that it can fulfill its possibilities, you know. And that's what Humanity Rising Network, with the great support of John and all of the partners that are engaged with Sign and all of the partners around the world, it's what we can do together, because we don't have a choice, you know. John, you were talking about dedication and the dedication that you show. And the truth of the matter is, what's the option today? You know, are we really willing and able to sit back and let this catastrophe happen and miss this incredible transition that we're in so that we can capitalize on the extraordinary possibilities of humanity that are just beginning in some ways to emerge, you know? And that's what this presentation, this communication of vital information on critical topics of our time, delivered by people who care, who are in the trenches, who are doing the hard and noble work of transformation in our time, coupled with the skill and competency development possibilities that ubiquity brings and was born to deliver in many ways, and other institutions. And then to couple that with this genius of what you've begun to create, John, which is the movement down and in, the movement that ignites and it inspires and it gives individuals opportunity not just to want to be involved, but to know where they need to go to get involved, you know? And these pieces constitute magic. The magic canoe, the magic of humanity rising, the magic of a world-class global network. And so those of you who are out there listening, those of you who are watching and feeling or will watch any of this in replay, know that there's a place for you here. It always touches me when I remember the gift each one of us has as individuals. We come in with a blueprint. We come in with a special note in a song that nobody else can sing. And if we don't sing it, then maybe it's only a fraction of a second, but there's silence in the universe where the note we have to offer needs to be sung and played. And this dynamic that we're talking about gives us all that opportunity to say, I matter, I have something to give, something to share, something to contribute, a way to make a difference. And so that's the call here. I mean, we can talk about the technologies and the this and the that, but ultimately, it's a call to the heart of humanity. It's a call to that soul that Jim was just talking about in the last segment. That's what makes this so special. And each of you have something to contribute. Ideas, concepts, people that you know, things that you want to see accomplished, dollars that you can direct to projects and to initiatives that can make an actual difference. And then the thing that allows us to roll up our sleeves and get involved, not to be passive observers of a life that passes us, but to be proactive participants, to be change makers, to be all of those things. And that's what Humanity Rising Network and this assemblage of partners is all about. So,
Thank you, George. Like John, you're coming with deep passion and conviction, and and it overwhelms the heart when you really take in the enormity of the challenge and the enormity of the responsibilities that we have now to take full use of the opportunities that are emerging out of the crisis that is befalling us. And I think that the vision that George came in with was this vision of really linking everything that Humanity Rising and Sign and Unity Earth and all the other partners that have been coming together and just beginning to coalesce. We're at the beginning of a global coalescence, and it hasn't gelled yet. And what is we're now beginning to work on is the scaffolding. What would it look like if literally thousands and thousands of organizations came together and Humanity Rising kind of fused with Unity Earth, and we began to build program. Right now we're doing about 2 hours a day. Just imagine if we went to 4, 6, 8, 12, 24 hours, and organizations from all over the world would come on the HRN, the Humanity Rising Network, and just share their content. And then the content is linked to their organizations and their events and their books and everything, their courses, everything that they want to bring into the world. Because if you think about where the world is, you have a lot of broadcast. Like the Queen was broadcast to a couple billion people, but there was no education. They just broadcast stuff. And then there's us who have lots of content, but nobody knows about it, as Otto Scharmer said, because nobody's seeing it, nobody's hearing it. So the idea now is to increase the broadcast capacity of Humanity Rising into a network and link all that content to the organizations, the NGOs, the progressive companies, the different institutions, the different events, like what John was saying of Nina there in Poland, bringing the Ukrainians and the Peruvians and the kids into Chicago together. What if that was being broadcast on something like CNN? That's what we need to do. And the point that George has made, which I think is important, as the world spins more and more out of control, people's appetite for just pure senseless entertainment is going to wane, because we're all being affected now by climate change. We're all being affected by the turbulence emanating out of the war in Ukraine. And people are starting to wake up and realize they need to pay attention in ways they never thought about before. And that's where Humanity Rising Network wants to be, is in that little sweet spot of rising concern, looking for real content, and then opportunities to actually do something in a collaborative way that can make a difference. And when we talk about making a difference, it doesn't have to be massive. It can be small little events all accumulating together like ripples in the pond. So that's the vision. And turning back to you, John, just to comment on this, because you've really spent a lot of time on putting together the scaffolding of your current convergence. And as you look to the future, I'd love to hear your vision of how all this amalgamation of goodness and imagination from around the world, in terms of the shape it could take as we build the scaffolding.
Yeah. Well, it starts exactly where we're at, right here. The indigenous knowledge that authenticity grants authority. It's listening to George and hearing his emotions and feeling that. And you, Jim, speaking from your heart. This is where it begins. You know, yeah, it can reach millions of people, but you know what? It's the way we are being with each other that really matters.
Yes.
Walking this path, we make
Yes.
the path visible. We're in a place we've never been before. We're very much going through some kind of initiation, you know, in that process. That's why the education is so important, because it was Picasso who said the meaning of life is to find your gifts. The purpose of life is to give them away. So all of us, we need to get clear on what our gifts are. And we need to also face our shadow. That's kind of what's going on. I watched the US and the Holocaust the other night. Oh my God, Ken Burns' documentary. Do you know where Hitler got the inspiration for the concentration camps? I mean, literally, he talked about it. It was the way the United States dealt with the Native Americans. So facing our shadow, it's happening, guys. This is the next part. And then honing our vision and taking responsibility for how we're all connected. This is the initiation process I think we're really all going through. And it starts from within. I know for me, one of my directives is learn to listen. I was stunned when I realized the word silent and the word listen are made from the same letters.
Mhm.
And when I said, okay, I need to learn to listen, it wasn't just to others, but also listen to myself. And then you realize how easy it is to be misunderstood, how often we misunderstand each other. So learning how to pause, learning how to use these spaces that we're in, these transformances we do, just let's drop in like you've been doing in the beginning of Humanity Rising. Let's connect up. It's a new medium. And with that love and trust, when we're in that kind of quiet space with each other, we can hear what you're talking about. I can sense it. We all can. How we unlock that potential. Tamsin, in her book, Teaming, says that nature doesn't solve problems. It just keeps opening doors. It just keeps moving to the positive. So we need to learn, maybe we don't. I don't know what we need to do. I know that we just hang out together and keep telling the truth with each other, with our inclination to do good and service in the world. I mean, that's the dream for the Magic Canoe. It's moving between worlds. There's lots of room. Everybody's welcome here to serve our journey home. I know for me personally, the less I need credit for anything I'm doing, the more effective I am. And being in service to this vision that you, Jim, have put forward in Humanity Rising and Ubiquity University, and what, George, you're bringing, that feeds my soul.
Mm.
And that's, and whenever I kind of lose that, you know, hey, how come they're not including me? And I know I'm off track. So there's something about the power of service. It was Martin Luther King, right? Everyone could be great because everybody could serve. And learning how we serve each other is the best thing I can do for myself, my family, and for everybody here. And that's my promise. We'll keep learning to listen. We'll lead with love and compassion. And we will find our way together. I'm in, all in. So grateful for the chance to be a part of this team. Humanity Rising.
Thank you, John. Thank you for all you're doing. It's such a powerful inspiration to me personally, and I think to all of us collectively. And you're so right. It's out of this authenticity of the heart, moment by moment, that the future is going to arise as we go through this initiatory process. So thank you for that. George, as you look to the future, give us a sense of what HRN would look like a year, 2 years from now, if the gods are beneficent and we're graced in the ways that we've been so far.
Well, you gave that 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 12 kind of premise, and I would see us on that path, but in, you know, an even deeper collaboration and cooperation with partners all over the world. I would see an endless series of reports on the impact that was happening in different aspects of the world, where people were practicing that old Chinese cliche that if everybody sweeps in front of their own home, then the street becomes really clean, you know? And the more we remember that we have that power to make such a huge difference, the more we remember what Bucky Fuller said, and that is that we were born to be the architects of the future and not its victims. That's where I see this collaboration and this possibility bringing us. And I think every time somebody learns that they can be an architect, the world has a better chance of doing better. And if we can just bring that to humanity and support that, we'll have accomplished something extraordinary.
Thank you, George, and thank you, John. I think this is a good point to close out our program for today, everyone. The world is such a complex place, and to be able to hold the center as we're seeking to do with authenticity, we need to be deeply empathetic. And I think that that's a tone that I would like to bring in as we conclude. Empathy for the Masa Amanis who have been martyred, age 22, for not having her hijab on right and was beaten to death. Empathy for Banafshe and the exuberance of dancing our liberation. You know, empathy for all the suffering that's going on in Ukraine right now, in Pakistan, that's, you know, 1/3 underwater. Empathy for the kids in the inner city of Chicago. Empathy for ourselves and for the suffering that we're seeing at every level all around us. And out of that comes deep compassion, and I think the commitment of all of us to do what now needs to be done to expand our coherence, to expand our capacity to offer our gifts out into the world. As Picasso said, such a powerful notion that the meaning of life is to know what your gifts are, and the purpose is to give them away. I mean, what greater mission for defining what humanity ultimately is than that one note of just giving our gifts away. So what we're doing is we're building Humanity Rising Network, because we're trying to find out a way to give more of our gifts to more people, to inspire them so that we can save ourselves. And there's many, many other people that are involved in this, but I wanted to just honor two individuals that have been seminal in both the creation and now future direction of Humanity Rising on this program. And we'll be back over the next weeks and months with more reports of where we're all headed as we build out this scaffolding. But just wanted to illuminate on this final Friday of the 99 days, the deep thanks to our partners and the vision now that we can all build together. So thank you, everyone. That'll do it for us for today. You're all welcome to the after session chat group. Stan has put the link in the chat box, and we'll see you all on Monday, where we're going to begin a 10-day program on nonviolence, with the world being in flames. We need to remember nonviolence, which is essentially who we actually are in our heart of hearts. So Tom Eddington, also with George Campanelli, are convening a 10-day program with Michael Naylor and others on the importance of nonviolence in our time. So that begins on Monday. All right, have a good weekend. Bye for now. Bye. Thank you, George.